Welcome to Alpha Wolf Trading. Did you know that there's over 12,000 stocks or companies that trade on the OTC? Between the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, you have over 7,000 companies. But us as retail investors, we wouldn't know that unless we were researching. Because why? Wall Street focuses on the elite, the big companies. And where the retail investor has their advantage is in small and micro-cap stocks. Why? Because you have the opportunity to speak directly with leadership. That is what this is all about here at Alpha Wolf Trading. We're trying to find the hidden gems, and we interview the executive teams of companies that we think meet the parameters to be those hidden gems. I also want to make sure you understand that this is not a paid-for promotion. I collect no compensation for the interviews I do here. These companies that I interview have been identified as potential opportunities for me and the members of Alpha Wolf Trading to receive a higher than average return on our investment. These companies I have identified either because of a technical setup on a chart, a fundamental change within the organization, new management team, new products, all kinds of different things that actually lead me here. But what do I think is the most important? Leadership. And that is why I do these interviews. I want to understand what drives the person that is leading the charge. I want to feel their passion. I want to understand their vision and the strategy that they're going to use to achieve success. That is what these interviews are for. I want to understand the share structure and the cap table, the size of the TAM, the total addressable market. This is the opportunity to learn all of those things. So sit back and enjoy. And if you learn anything from today's interview, do us a favor. Subscribe to the Alpha Wolf Trading YouTube channel. Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with another interview here. This time I have the head of corporate development from IPA and kind of a unique situation. I have another gentleman here that has been in the banking industry, been helping companies either get listed or find financing in the Canadian markets for over 20 plus years. And happens to be a pretty significant investor in this company here. Frederic Chabot from IPA, which is ImmunoPrecise Antibodies, right? And that also happens to be the symbol, IPA. Want to welcome both of you guys and thank you for taking the time this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Appreciate you having us.
All right, so IPA, you've had some interesting news developments in the last, I'd say, 30 to 60 days?
Yes. The company has been shifting gears lately into what we kind of think of it as the final chapter by integrating an AI company we acquired last year. This is an important step because when you work with biology, clients typically, want high throughput, they want speed, they want discovery done extremely fast. But biology has its own speed, so it's kind of very slow in terms of human timelines. So AI is the go-to sort of platform to start speeding drug discovery in essence. So in the last couple of months, maybe the 6 months, the company has been putting forward a stream of news, indicating to the market, how that integration is going, where it's going, and what kind of successful outcome it will generate for us and the shareholders.
All right, do me a favor, Frederic, and Paul, maybe give us a little bit of a background on your history, how you got here, and why IPA. I mean, what brought you to IPA? Why are you here?
So late 2016, a group of investors, including myself, few groups in Canada were considering retiring a couple of scientists based in Victoria that had this small business called ImmunoPrecise Antibodies that was created about 30 years ago. And they were doing some diagnostic discovery work, so nothing too incredible. Small income, they wanted to develop IP with the Victoria University. So very science focused, very creative owners, but not very compelling business plan. And so what we've discovered as we start to do due diligence on the company is that these guys were sitting on a ton of IP that was completely underutilized, not addressing the right markets and so on. So we offered them to take them public and concurrently retire them out of the story, and then start building a team and raise money to shift from diagnostic work to therapeutic discovery, which obviously is a way bigger market, more complex, albeit, but very fascinating. So early on, Paul, myself, and other individuals in Canada, we started to fund the company, trying to articulate a good business plan and move the story forward and try to capture some of the drug discovery market. And so since then, I just literally fell in love with all these technologies. I'm very techie by nature, so I love technology. Biology has its own world of complexities, and trying to find drugs, mainly antibodies, to cure cancer, for instance, is extremely complex, and everybody's kind of struggling to find novel ways to find purposeful antibodies to help fight disease. So the learning going into that space was immense. The knowledge base is abundant, so I love learning stuff. So I just got hooked on the whole biological side of things, and I decided to just dedicate all my time to the company itself. So I kind of stopped doing IR, capital raising sort of activities, and focus more on the company. And that's how I mainly got involved with the story.
Okay, Paul, what brought? I mean, I know you're part of this fund, I guess, that identified the company. What was it that you saw that brought you on?
Well, yeah, thanks, Tim. It was pretty unique to find a situation where they had developed all this intellectual protocol, like the IP intellectual property that they had found and were developing was underutilized. And actually, we found one of the, I don't want to call him a mentor, but a scientist, was a friend of the developers of IPA, and he found this unique way of finding antibodies in rats at the time. And he asked the owner, he said, can I buy that technology, that platform from you? He went ahead and did that and bought it. And I don't think that, the sell price was next to nothing at the time. This is before we even found the company. That was the seeds of a public company on the NASDAQ now worth, upwards of close to $1 billion. So, if that kind of IP is inside of IPA, we got very interested. So, that's kind of the seeds of me getting interested, and it went from there.
Excellent. Okay, so recently though, that started with this was identifying. Is it the proteins? Is the proteins, right? Isn't that the?
Well, specifically antibodies, which is a protein.
Specifically antibodies. How many antibodies are there? Approximately.
More than the amount of atoms in the universe. So that's why it's exceedingly difficult to find a specific antibody. Is nature is able to code and generate as many antibodies that you can think of. So that's problem number one. How do we actually find these antibodies that we're after to target a cancer cell or something of the sort? So it's a vast numbers problem in part, and that's why the AI is so intuitively important to that very problem. Because AI is perfectly designed. We can go into that later in the call, but AI is perfectly designed to tackle that biological problem of numbers and possibilities.
AI was not part of the company that you guys originally got involved in, right?
That's correct. That's just recent. Though so a year and a half after we listed on Canada, the original CEO resigned, and then as Paul was referring to, the company that Robert Beecroft, the founder, sold the technology to was Ligand Pharmaceutical. So we started to develop a very good relationship with Ligand, who was a very good partner of ours. And they came back to us and said, well, we know of a lady called Dr. Jennifer Bath, who just stopped working with her previous employer, which was Aldevron. As you probably know, that big company was based in North Dakota, and Aldevron was into RNA, DNA manufacturing. Jennifer was in charge of in part of the antibody business over there in Germany. And she did a quick market assessment of what was going on. And over the last, say, decade, pharma wanted to outsource the work of discovery and consolidate vendors. So typically a pharma would have 30 vendors for doing drug discovery, which is kind of insane. It creates a bunch of liabilities, contracts. It's very expensive, inefficient, very slow. And her idea was to build a company where it would be one-stop shop, one platform. You go in with an idea, you find me an antibody for X, what's your antibody? So she wanted to put that together. While at the same time, IPA was actually struggling to build this type of model partly by doing some acquisitions in Europe and so on. So that was the first step. Jennifer joined the company soon thereafter and started to straighten out the business plan, build the infrastructure to start addressing the pharma need, and then move the story forward. So at that point, actually, one of my passion was algorithmic design, trading platforms, predictive algorithms, and so on. And very early in our collaboration, when she joined, I kind of hinted it would be fabulous to start thinking about involving AI at some point in our business, right? And that kind of slowly triggered the process of us going out there in the world and trying to analyze, different approaches, different algorithms, different companies, and so on. It took us practically 4 years to come down to BioStrand, which was, an immense opportunity for us. So it was in the strategic decision to get involved in the AI. The problem is it's more the same out there, so it wasn't really disruptive of unique. And since IPA is very focused on technological innovation in the labs, the same philosophy had to be emulated during the AI, due diligence sort of period. And that's how BioStrand came about as an acquisition for us. So it's a huge milestone that kind of completes the integration of the one-stop shop concept. Now we got like this flywheel effect where lab contributes to AI, AI contribute back to lab, and so on. So it's kind of a closed loop now that's high.
Folks, we had some technical difficulties, but Frederic will be back.
For your viewers, it's going to be a great time to kind of take a look at us, because technically we've had a couple of things happened trading wise. We had like a conference call, right? And just about that time we slipped under $4. And at that point, some of the brokerages in Canada chopped half the margin from the ability to margin IPA.
Yeah.
So what happened is you got, it's a partial margin call. You got people being forced to sell. Then you're hitting some stop losses, and that created, some weakness and some fear. Then we hit 3 and we went under 3 and we lost all margin at these firms. When you lose all margin, there's complete chaos, right? Because you're getting full margin calls on people were losing, big parts of their position, forced selling. And that we ended up like scooting down below through 3 and kind of stayed there because of all this weakness. And now we're starting to rebuild. So at this price, it's looking like amazingly enticing. We're going back, 3-4 years, and we didn't have AI back then. We signed 3 AI deals now, and these are going to be game changing type of technology innovation that we've got going on. It's just you got to get there in terms of revenue, and I think now the market's looking for revenue, and we're right on the edge of that.
Frederic, let's see. Say something.
All right. Testing. Of course, this had to happen right now.
Ah, that's way better, man. Way better.
Oh my goodness.
Perfect. Okay, it's all right. That's okay. I'm glad I said something. I didn't want to go through the whole interview with that. So I mean, we're good now.
Perfect.
All right. So Paul was just telling me the scenario on the stock and kind of why this could be even a more compelling time to be taking a look at the company, right?
Yeah.
Having to do with margin ability and all that stuff through the institution, and breaking support is always tough, right? I mean, that was, you guys broke up a big level of support, and that's why technically it broke down, right? But you've got more things happening and more deals signed than you did before, right? Company's stronger than it was 6 to 12 months ago. Would that be a fair statement?
It's completely fair. I mean, we've been adding technologies, partnerships, growing the business, growing the IP now, and yet we trade at the same value 3 years ago or 2 years ago, whatever that was. It's partly a function of macro and some broader market illiquidity, which IP has been suffering from. IPA is really the cap table is really retail focused. Like 99%, 90% of our investors are essentially retail guys that have been supporting us since the day one of the listing. So it has its advantages in terms of following. There's some very loyal, passionate investors in this story for sure, but it also sometimes exacerbates illiquidity and exacerbates also volatility. So we've been seeing some of that as well.
How many shares do you have fully diluted outstanding?
25 million. Out of which probably 15 is in very strong hands. or escrowed. So that doesn't leave a lot of shares to trade out there. So that's why the volume has been quite anemic. And so for an institution to contemplate building a position in IPA is kind of difficult. Like our biggest shareholder is Ingalls and Schneider. They've been very supportive since we were actually on the OTCQB. So many years ago, it took them probably 3 years to build a 1 million share position. So it's not easy. So we'll need at some point to address this liquidity problem, partly by involving very focused funds, institutions that are looking for AI in healthcare and drug discovery. I think that will be a prerequisite from now on.
So let's, I cut you guys off. I cut you off right after we talked about the acquisition of the AI component, right? So Paul, can you share with everyone what is the significance of the AI component in combination with what you had previously with the antibodies?
I mean, from an investor point of view, the different platforms that IPA has to discover antibodies for their, I mean, I think it's somewhere around 17, 18 of the top 20 pharmas globally, the biggest of the big, trust IPA for discovering antibodies and doing work as a CRO. So that side of the business is steady, growing, and that's what makes IPA, in my opinion, very investable for the average investor. Biotech is a dicey and sometimes very volatile area to invest in. But if you have a baseline company with a baseline CRO, the CRO is called Contract Research Organization. They do the nuts and bolts work through their different platforms for the pharmas, the biggest of the big. As I said, 80% of the top 20 use us. And I think last year IPA was voted #1 CRO in some format globally. So that as a baseline is a very solid company, and that side of the business is growing steadily. There's great margins, in the order of 55 to 60% margins on that CRO side of the business. Then what IPA did is, as Fred intonated, is they went out and they knew that IA was an important factor to speed drug discovery for pharmas. They need to find drugs quicker, and that's a big advantage because it's a race to patent. If you're a week ahead, you could be getting a patent on a drug that could be multi-billion. So the AI, they found a company finally after 4 years of kind of searching the Me Too's and the little increases and not very significant increases, but they found a company that actually, we believe, BioStrand is a very big leap. And highlighting a couple of weeks ago, or last week, I think, they were given a patent for their HIFT technology, which is patterns of the world's biome. So in essence, it would give the advantage. AI can pound through all kinds of data, but there's not enough computers in the world to get through all the biological data in a way that's going to find you drugs in a meaningful and fast way. But if you've created a language of the world's biome, instead of now letters, you're dealing with sentences and words. If you can sort through those sentences and words, the fingerprints of the world's biome, much quicker, then you need less computing power, and you can do it much, much quicker. So maybe Fred can kind of take over from there, but that's my thoughts on it from an investor point of view and what I've learned.
All right, Fred, you want to take us to the next level here?
The next level is what we were looking for is something that would disrupt entirely the whole industry. And obviously that's not easy to find if it even existed, right? And we stumbled on BioStrand. They were trying to sell this platform as a data management sort of technology, and they use their proprietary technology, which are, as Paul called them the HIFs, which is actually their last name of the inventor. And essentially what a HIF is, and that's actually a discovery, he's discovered at the amino acid level. So amino acids are all over the biosphere. It's what creates, it's at the basis of any protein. You have an amino acids that folds into a protein, and these are the building blocks of life. He's discovered fingerprints all across these amino acid sequences, and it kind of triggered, an intuition that, if there is such a thing as a system that governs biology, it has to be operating based on something, right? Off of something. So typically, a system is composed of, words, sentences, meaning, which then translate into a function, and that's how biology is organized from a scientific standpoint. It's always the same thing: sequence, structure, function. So sequence ends up in a structure, protein, and then that structure has a very specific function. So that's the paramount rule. So the challenge is, from a sequence, can we predict a function? Or can we predict a structure? Now we can, partly because of Google initiative DeepMind that created a software called AlphaFold, which is very good at taking a sequence, which is just a bunch of letters jammed together, and actually project the model, the 3D, the structural model of that sequence. It's a huge leap for biology. Now the real task is, how do we tie these structures to specific functions? And that's the $1 trillion question. If someone comes with a technology that's going to tie those functions to the structures of proteins, it's game over. Then we will greatly accelerate drug discovery and health and lifespan and so on. So Dirk van Hyfte discovers these little fingerprints, and he starts chasing them, right? And he's using NLP, which is natural language processing, which now is known as LLM, so large language models, which essentially is what driving ChatGPT and all these AI tools out there. So it's a more sophisticated platform than NLPs, but initially they used NLPs. So his intuition was, let's analyze the language of biology as I would with any language, and find the rules, the words, the boundaries of words, of meaning, and so on. So he captured a few of these fingerprints, and he started to chase them. And he sold his previous company. They mortgaged the house. They went all in, bootstrap, chasing these things, because they knew they were on something very, very hot and novel. And then he had his Eureka moment when he realized he couldn't find anymore. At 660 million of those, it stopped. They couldn't find any more.
660 million proteins.
Fingerprints.
Okay.
Yeah, that's capped. And that was the moment he says, we got it. Why? Because if you have a system out there that governs biology, you need to have a finite amount of words, rules, and so on. So 660 was the limit of the fingerprints. They couldn't find any more. And so then he knew he was on something big. And then he started to formalize this and build an index like Google would do with the internet, right? He would build an index for those 660 million fingerprints, the HIFs, and then use that to start understanding, to read the book of biology, right? Now that we have the words, the letters, and you can actually put these HIFs together in networks, there are multiple HIFs, like a sentence. So now the whole biology opens up, because now you can actually make sense of what's going on. And we've discovered later that these HIFs actually are pointing to those famous functions we're looking for. And so they're making these correlations between structure and function. So we're on a trajectory to unlock this extremely difficult task of tying function back to structure. It if we manage to pull that off, it's going to be, revolutionary in its own way, because we will have solved one of the major problems in biology. So that's kind of the foundation of why we went after that. We were completely flabbergasted, I would say, when we started to do due diligence on that platform, and oh my God, these guys literally have like found the Rosetta Stone of biology, and now we just have to understand, the syntax of it all and move forward. So it was a complete fit, because when the two groups met in Europe 2 years ago, we have all this biology expertise, right? We discovered drugs through biological platforms, essentially. They're data scientists, and they also wanted to, use that technology to help find drugs and fight disease and eventually aging. So for them, doing a deal with us made a whole lot of sense, because it wasn't just acquiring BioStrand, it was acquiring BioStrand for the higher purpose of designing drugs for essentially humanity. So that's what got us together, and that's why they accepted. In partly in the majority of the deal was done in shares, because they wanted to work for the upside that eventually what the company will probably capture, right? And so yes, they were into the money, but they were more into, all right, so we're going to have a new company coming out of that transaction that's going to do formidable things. So that's kind of the ground. That's how that's kind of the ground and the foundation of this transaction. And within a year, we already integrated them, augmented their knowledge base in drug discovery, because you more or less knew what an antibody is, but how do you actually make an antibody that's clinically relevant, that's going to go into the clinic and not kill the patients and not be toxic and so on. I mean, there's a multi-dimensional questions surrounding around the drug discovery conversation. So within a year, Tim, these guys ramped up their knowledge base in drug discovery, fully understood at the molecular level what an antibody does, how it binds to a protein, the reactions, the counter reaction, because all this is constantly moving in the body, right? So it's not like static. Build a platform, a workflow, a pipeline that would go through all the steps of discovery, but in silico with the computers, and use the HIFs, the technology, to start aligning and anchoring the discovery process with the computers. All that in a year, and sign a couple deals with small biotechs, and now one large pharma. So kudos to them. Kudos to the IPA scientific team of pulling this off in a year. I don't recall any company doing that so fast. Right in the middle of an AI revolution or paradigm shift now, where we're having ChatGPT and all these language models popping up all over the place, which will then in turn accelerate even further these platforms and their utilization. So it's extremely exciting. We're probably entering the golden era of AI at this very moment, right in front of our eyes. OpenAI, ChatGPT, and then the competitors that are about to come online, all going to show up and demonstrate amazing capabilities, which in turn we will take and put it in our own platform to accelerate even further our own processes. So it's a very interesting time.
So I want to try and highlight. So I think the average time for a pharma to get a drug to market approved, somewhere around, I think, 7 years and well over, I think, $7 billion. Does that sound about accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it's about 10-year process from the idea. So before the idea, you actually need also to find a target. So that could take another 5 years, but let's call it a 10-year process, where someone, typically a postdoc scientist, has been studying that specific biomarker or that specific molecule, and they say, we can do a drug. It's a long process, and then you got to find the target, you got to find where you're gonna target it, whereabouts specifically on the surface, and then you got to find the antibody that's going to do the work, or the antibodies, or whatever strategy you're using. So, and yes, indeed, it's billions of dollars, and it's slow. Probably in the next couple of years, that 10-year will turn out to be maybe 6 months, and then 3 months, and then probably at some point you're just going to design a drug on the spot for a very specific individual that has a specific genome. That's the goal, is to go into precision medicines. So you have a specific genome with all its biomarkers and its intricacies. So we would read your genome, and then we would say, yeah, you have this gene, typically that can generate some kind of disease down the line. So we're going to target that immediately and then design a drug to do that. So we're not there yet, obviously, but this is ultimately the drug, the goal. Historically, what's been happening now is, you have a group of patients, they all have kidney cancer, but there's no such thing as kidney cancer. They have 20 different cancer cells within the kidney. So you can't cure kidney cancer. You need to specifically target the cancer cells. So if you have 20 different ones, you need to have 20 different drugs that's going to work for each person. But right now, what we're doing, we're hoping to strike as many people as possible with positive therapies, but it's just not doable because everybody's unique. So that adds on an additional layer of complexities in drug design. So they're trying to find commonalities when they design a drug, but that's it's as efficient as we can see now, but it's not really efficient, right?
Right. So everything that you guys have in place, it would seem to me, is right on point with where everything seems to be going, right? With the precise, to somebody's genetic makeup, the antidote or cure for whatever it is, whatever ailment they're looking at, it's precise to them, right? To their genome.
Correct. So can you imagine the amount of data you have to go through to figure out, all right, we're going to sequence your genome. So thanks to 23andMe and Ancestry now, we can do that for $100 overnight. So your doctor eventually will come and say, all right, let's sequence your genome. Let's analyze your genome. So right now, we can't even do that properly because there's too much data point. And then you got to correlate these data points back to drug design. So essentially back to a synthetic antibody that would target XYZ markers in your genome, and to successfully build a therapeutic. So right now, there's no machine on Earth that can process that amount of data. It's just too much. That's the core problem of that everybody's facing. So what you need to do, as Jennifer often says, intelligent coding. That's why the HIFs are so incredible, is they discriminate the calculation required to actually figuring out the function that you're looking for. Because you have a set amount of fingerprints, 660 million, you don't need to compute the rest. You just need to read, as per the HIFs, what needs, which direction is pointing. So that's a quick calculation, 600 million units. You can do that in 1 second, 2 seconds, right? So the rest is irrelevant. It's like saying, I'm going to jam that sentence with hundreds of words. That's just going to create chaos. What I really need is a specific set of words that's going to carry my meaning to you. Well, it's the same principle with the HIFs. To discriminate everything else, it's, well, if that's the function you're looking for, you need to look for those patterns. You need to look for the specific fingerprints, and then that's going to help us find the antibody that does that. So can you imagine? You actually literally just cleared all the computer power out of the equation by using that index. Nobody's doing that on the planet at the moment, and we doubt anybody will, because they A, were patented now, and B, they would have to figure out how to find these fingerprints, which I doubt they would in any meaningful timeline. So that's kind of it. So, and then the platform can actually connect sequences to text. So in essence, like Jennifer is using this example often is, scientists like her, she would go on a hunch that, maybe this marker, this specific protein needs to be targeted to reduce some kind of cancer. And they would spend 5-10 years doing research, going through literature, reading about it, trying to formulate an hypothesis about how to go about targeting this thing, right? Well, with the platform, because they connect the sequence world to the text, when I say text, is essentially scientific publications, right? All that work, the 10 years of work, can actually be done now in 2 hours. So the computer will go out, source out all the literature about an XYZ topic, and then start connecting, sequences to these topics, and start, connecting concepts all together. And then suddenly on a knowledge graph, you have all these graphics that show you stuff that you would have never figured out otherwise, because it's not in your face. Now it is. So within a couple of hours, the NLP goes out there, connects all these dots, these hidden knowledge, and back to the science. They connect it back to the sequence. So can you imagine the amount of time we're saving using those? So we've just recently launched the first program of such, the NLP program, with a Pharma Biotech in Europe. It was a huge success, right? They spent years trying to figure out, why is this marker not as efficient as the other one, and they couldn't find it. And within a couple of hours, the AI came back and say, here's your correlation, and then suddenly it dawned on them, oh, because of this, because of that. So that's incredible, and that's just bound to accelerate even further, because those fingerprints, they're data objects. Because the way Dirk built the index, you can actually enrich them with more knowledge. So as they figure out, oh, this protein is tied to this function, that's new knowledge. That enriches the actual HIFT. So it keeps on growing in its knowledge base.
Which makes that lead that you have, I mean, like you said, even if there was somebody that was starting to try and identify those fingerprints, 660 million of them, that's going to take a little while. By the time they actually get that done, you're going to be so far ahead, because it's getting smarter the whole time. You're identifying outcomes, right?
Correct.
And there's no way they're catching up to that.
No, I think it would be better for them to just offer us a couple $1 billion and then be done with it. It'll be a lot simpler.
Only a couple billion? Only a couple billion? Come on, man. You're going.
I didn't want to sound too promotional here.
Yes, please.
All right. So I think even if you're not really into biology and pharma and all that stuff, I think we've done a pretty good job of explaining what the company does, right? And Jennifer is who you're speaking of. That's the CEO of the company, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
She's the one who she's an incredible scientist. So she's got this really high standard of scientific rigor, right? Throughout the company, everything is so rigorous. It's strict. Conversely, though, she has this open mind where she will listen to novel ideas, innovation, and so on. And that's how we got into the BioStrand conversation. It wasn't obvious at the very beginning to try to make a case about BioStrand, right? Because how is that thing is actually going to help us build better drugs, land more contracts, and grow the business, and so on. And yet she encouraged the process until we built a report, and then we got back at her, and then we presented our findings, and she was like, "That's it. That's hugely important." So, rarely you have people like that have a scientific mind, but also a mind where you have a lot of creativity, and you can assess those opportunities and integrate or act upon. So it's a very good and powerful mix. Since she onboarded with IPA, I mean, the company has been tremendously transformed into what's going to hold. We all going to become a mini pharma company where we can, generate drugs, find drugs, and then license these drugs out to the bigger pharma. That's the end game. The CRO as a business is fine. It's a platform, it's bread and butter, and we keep improving these platforms and we keep innovating with these platforms. But the AI is going to greatly speed up the process and give us additional feedback as to how to do things. So you can't let one go to the benefit of the other. It's locked into this flywheel of feedback and which in turn accelerates innovation, right? So it's never ending. So that's kind of all our business plan and business model. So it's obviously very complex, sometimes too slow, and for investors, sometimes these processes are extremely slow, right? And investors, they want actionable transactions, they want, upfront and so on, and business deals. But you have to understand that the landscape in which we do business, pharma, they are about speed, but they're very thorough. Their due diligence processes are, tough. So
you don't see a lot of pharma companies going out and buying, drug companies, small drug companies coming up with one drug. You don't see them go out and buy it. They're willing to pay up. They'd rather pay up when the data is very solid and than to take the risk of buying early, right? They'll wait until the drug is damn near approved, right? Or
absolutely
approved with side effects and all that safety has been cleared. They'll pay up. They'll wait, right?
Absolutely. That's the money is not. It's not about the money. It's about the data, and so that's why going full AI is also going to change that landscape, because you can, even nowadays, FDA is looking into having in silico clinical trials. So you can actually model a clinical trial based on past trials in the computer. So you will literally be able to take a molecule and drop it into a synthetic trial and then kind of measure the potential outcome, whether favorable or not favorable, of a specific molecule. So can you imagine the amount of time and money they'll be saving in just processing these in silico trials? Is going to be phenomenal, and that's at our doorstep. And yet another reason why our technology is so compelling is because we can actually tie clinical data back to drug discovery. So at some point, the pipeline at IPA with the AI is going to cover an idea, the discovery, and a clinical trial, all modeled in a computer before you even think about going into a real patient. That's the future. That's tomorrow. So you need to be equipped to capture all that market in a seamless platform. So we tend to think we have it.
What's funny is that a lot of the, you mentioned it, the AI, this was not too long ago when ChatGPT came out. It was like, AI just went nuts, right? But a lot of companies jumped on board. I mean, everybody and their brother all of a sudden had an AI component to their business, right? But a lot of that stuff is not AI, right? It's just hype. This is the real deal. I mean, you guys just signed with a pretty big pharma, right? Go.
Yeah, STS, Japanese company. Japanese are rigorous. They're very difficult when it comes to collaborating with them. They have high standards. So it's a testament of the technology. I think the patent was a wake-up announcement for the market that IPA is not just fantasizing over this technology. It's real. It's patented. Going through the patent took 3 years. It's complicated patent too, so the agents were kind of scrambling to understand what was this all about. But that now it's all said and done. The patent is filed, it's published, it's ours. It makes it real. And so that's why it's so paramount for us to have that out there. Now the question is, how are we gonna, like you say in computer science, it's garbage in, garbage out. If you feed your AI with all sorts of data, you know, the outcome is probably going to be very bad, no matter how clever the AI is, right? In this instance, we have a ton of data that's not accessible to the public. And the majority of these AIs out there, they're trained on public data. So that makes them kind of all the same and kind of ordinary and not that attractive. If you start feeding it with some proprietary data, which we have because we have all these proprietary technologies, plus the HIFs, then you're starting to get to the next level. More importantly, not only it's going to be good data out, but the way the HIFs work, we're going to have also an extremely interesting data out of the platform, because the HIFs will connect back to the output and bring it right back into this loop. And so again, that's proprietary, so it's not going to be out there. So I think as we ramp our efforts here, we're going to take the pole position with all that conversation.
So let me ask you guys, what do you see? What do you see as let's clarify some things here. First of all, the market in general sucks. It has sucked for the last 24 months, right? Especially for biotech and small cap, right? They're cash burning machines. And right now, in this climate, if you have to get financing, this is not fun. This is not a fun time to get financing. And that's what everybody is concerned about when it comes to small microcap companies, is that if you need to get financing, you're going to get screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How is IPA sitting in terms of financing? I mean, how are they sitting right now?
Right. So we have about 10 million in the treasury. Compared to these other biotechs, we're not a binary event company where the molecule you've been spending hundreds of millions on is going to make it or break it, which, you know, that's insanity. We're into building platforms, and the AI, the cost of running our AI is ridiculously low in comparison to anything else. So margins will be quite high at that level. So I think the conversation is not the same that if we were a pure biotech. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you know, when investors and banks come to us, they want to capture that opportunity of being invested in a AI discovery driven story. So that's kind of different. There is high demand for that type of deals because there is not a lot of them out there. You know, there's probably maybe 10 companies that are public that are doing somewhat what we're doing, and even then, it's like semi-AI sort of thing. So, and it's kind of a lab discovery platform disguised or propped up as AI sort of thing. So it's, you know, it's a step forward, but it's not true AI. So really, once you start engaging with institutions that invest in that space, and you start telling them with the patent in hand, this is what we can do, this is where we are, the conversation dramatically changes, and you can see that there's a lot of excitement based on that fact. So yes, we're in the drug discovery business, we're in the biotech, but we're also in, you know, in the kind of tech AI sort of space as well. So the relationship with the market participant is completely different, I would argue. So we'll see. The company is in a process of filing an F3, so it's a registration statement for foreign issuers such as ourselves. We'll put a new prospectus, shelf-based prospectus in place. We had one in Canada that expired in January, so we're probably going to finalize that.
And that's you're putting that in place. It's good to have those in place no matter what. That's just good business practice,
of
right?
Course. So no institution is going to trade your stock if they see that you don't even have a prospectus in place, because then you're not open for business. Obviously, at some point, would love to do a raise, but on a opportunistic fashion, right? So there's no rush to do a raise now, obviously not at these levels, but it's important for us to start positioning some sticky money, some very savvy funds. We've met a bunch of them already. We're still going to do our ongoing non-deal roadshow to talk with these funds that have a particular appetite for that type of deal and see what's going to come out of there. But definitely, we would love to position some savvy funds in there in this story to help us build this thing and move this thing forward. So we're
then the other possibility is, now that you got the patent, right? Does that make you more attractive as a possible acquisition?
Yes. Again, that conversation is it's not a conversation we kind of like, because the company is so undervalued. Of course, the conversation, this topic comes up because, $100 million, someone is looking to have, these technologies, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, the thing is, the moment there would be any bid in the market to buy us up, the stock is so strongly held. I mean, no investors of ours would even contemplate anything sub $1 billion, because we have, strategic guidelines and objectives so it makes no sense. We've had in the past many times over propositions which have been turned down by the board and the management of the company, because it just doesn't make any sense. Why would you sell now when all the upside and the is in front of us? That's just that would be mad about that one.
That would be my concern too, right? Is that you sell too early. I mean, if everything comes to pass as to what you're signaling, right, that you're going to be able to identify outcomes, shorten drug discovery timeline by a significant margin, which is going to save companies a shitload of money, right? I mean, there's a not only that, but just the impact it has on taking out some of these diseases, right? Maybe curing shit, right? I mean, that becomes how do you even put a valuation on that? I don't even know if you can.
Exactly. So I think we need to stay focused on executing the business plan, executing, the strategic choices we made many years ago, which was build the AI platform, prove it, build case studies off of it, which in turn will. So as a FYI, we have north of 600 clients. Majority of the big pharma are using our services for their own drug discovery campaigns and so on. So when we decided to go with these AI deals to our partners, we didn't go broad. We just selected a few biotechs and a couple of pharma, and we said, listen, we know you have appetite for novelty and disruptive technologies. Here's what we're sitting on. We'd love to propose you an early adopter sort of program where we would do some collaborations together, right? So that's in essence what came out of the STS deal and the other couple of Libera and Bracell and so on. So it's to help us prove and optimize this platform so it's at par with the expectations of our partners. Once that's done, once the data is compiled and articulated in a way that shines a good light on our capabilities, then we're going to go broad. And obviously, this will generate a lot of business opportunities for us, because once it's proven, it's proven. So not only do you have a patent in hand that kind of proves the technology is solid, you also start generating marketing material based on case studies that's going to go out there for our client list and say, well, we're open for business. And that's just so we're clear, that's just for like the high profile big deals, the biobuck deals, right? We also have been putting in place low-hanging fruit sort of rinse and repeat sort of services. So small AI modules, immunogenicity screening, and structural prediction and epitope mapping, all these things, $50,000 a pop. It costed like 2 hours of server time, and that's it. And these things, there's a significant market for those. So we're hoping that in the short term, this next couple quarters, BioStrand will start generating recurring revenue from these modules. We've started to hit our list of clients with the immunogenicity screening, which we think we can sell by the thousands. So because everybody would want to know before they get in a clinic if there could be any potential liabilities with their assets, right? So our competitors right now, it takes 8 weeks, $50,000 for 3 molecules. That's the program they propose. For us, we can add a couple more molecules in there, and we do everything in 24 hours. So we're going to completely kill that market as the output will prove to be as reliant, if not better, than what's out there. So that's a tiny stream we've been building in parallel with the bigger ideas of drug discovery. So
you've got some catalysts in the next 6 to 12.
Oh, tons, because the BrioCell deal, which is a small biotech, the data is starting to roll in right now. So typically how this will go is we're going to agree upon a program with a specific target in mind, and then we need to find an antibody or emulate one of whatever, and then we build it. So with a computer, it's pretty fast. A couple of weeks, maybe 4 weeks, you're done. You have your molecules, hundreds of them probably. And then you screen them down into those that are the most promising, and then you push them into the lab. And then this is key, because now in the lab, you'll need to build that synthetic antibody discovered in the computer. You need to build it in vitro, right? You need to have an antibody that's real, that's going to go and bind itself or have some kind of functional activity towards the antigen, the target you've been aiming at, right? And this is key. If the company successfully design a pure in silico antibody that's going to end up in the lab doing what it said it was supposed to do in the computer, nobody has achieved that to my knowledge at this point. So that would be a huge catalyst. It would be a huge case study that we will go out and publish, obviously, because it's an important milestone. So literally to create a binder in vitro that's been 100% designed in the computer. If you can do that, then it opens up all the possibilities of targeting any disease out there. So the catalyst will be in part data-driven, right? So we're going to have all these case studies and marketing material that's going to showcase the success of the platform, while we also perform all these other collaborations with these other partners, and then keep the market appraised of the status. They all have more or less the same kind of deal structure, which is upon delivery of the antibodies, the partner need to either out-license or we keep it all back. So if they out-license, it's going to be some kind of upfront amount of money, and then they're going to take it. It then secures them the IP around these assets, and then they're going to take it internally, do some testing, whatever. And then if they move these things forward, then we're going to be eligible for some milestone payments, IND filing, clinic, A1, A2B, and so on, and then royalties. Obviously, these deals are not as high profile as what you could read out there, but that's early adopters. As you prove the platform, evidently the access fee is going to ramp dramatically, and then you're going to be in a position to command a lot more money down the line, right? So, but in essence, our pharma partners, what they're more concerned about is less the money, but the IP, right? If you do find something valuable, they want to be able to have a mechanism where they say, all right, we're out licensing this thing because we want to own this IP. Doesn't mean that the asset can actually be successful at doing what it was supposed to be doing, but maybe it brought a whole new light on some activity or some functional data points that they want to own, right? So again, it's not binary. There's a whole data conversation around these programs. So it's super compelling, right?
So what kind of revenue is IPA generating now?
This year, probably fiscal year ends end of this month, April. Okay. 23 million top line. It's been growing at a 10% rate when you normalize all the operations. Some operations are more profitable at the moment. The Canadian operations are surging with their B-cell memory workflow. It's a highly popular platform at the moment. We've also moved our manufacturing facility out of the old lease into a brand new building with Genmab and Merus. It's the accelerator building in Utrecht in the Netherlands, and it tripled the space, and it's filling quite rapidly. So that business is good cash flow, so it's going to keep on growing. So at an annualized rate, probably somewhere around 10% is our projection. One thing to note though is over time, the bigger partners, they start with small projects. But then over time, as they gain confidence in the output of all our platforms, they actually ramp in size and in length and in multiple programs. So those pharma we onboarded 3 years ago, they're starting to ramp their orders. Now it's not uncommon to see $1 million order for a very thorough program. So we want to obviously ramp those up. It just takes time. But our aim is to probably have $1 million per lab. So we have 3 labs, so $3 million a month sort of business model. So at 36 million top line, we would be profitable, covering even the R&D spent that we budgeted. So that's kind of compelling for us. But that's bread and butter. So that's kind of the basic revenue we're going off of.
Right. That's not. I would say you're. I don't want to call you sandbagging, but I mean, I would say you're being very conservative, right?
That's just day-to-day operation. Then when you go into all this AI revenue stream, it could literally double the revenue just off of those modules I was referring to, because the genius of BioStrand is not only have they made all these discoveries and built that fabulous platform, they're also expert in cloud architecture and the way the whole system is implemented, all the pipelines, everything is scalable at will. So if you want to do 100 immunogenicity screening, you don't need on your computer to go one project after another. You just scale on AWS instantaneously. So scalability is already baked in the platform. It's already designed and operational. So anything we do is scalable from an AI, bioinformatics standpoint. So that's going to be very interesting to see at which point we will have a capacity problem with these modules. So that's the low hanging fruit, short term sort of revenue stream. And then obviously when you get into the conversation of collaborations, and we all hope some kind of successful discovery program that ends up being out licensed, then we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, which would dramatically change the valuation of the company the moment we're going to strike one of those deals, right?
And the patent that you just got should help spark that conversation, or no? It
adds it for their due diligence. It adds credibility, right? Asteas was very intrigued by the platform. They wanted us to show them to a certain extent. Obviously, we're not going to show the black box, but we can show the pipeline, right? The workflow, what we do. They were quite impressed by with our molecular dynamic platform. So essentially, it's a platform that takes an antibody and emulates the environment in which it evolves. Because the problem with biology is it wobbles in the blood, right? It's in the body, in the biology. It's everything is in constant movement. It's force fields, energy relationships, and so on. So it's not static. So when you design an antibody, it's not like a key and it doesn't work that way. Everything changes conformation and wobbles and so on. So it's extremely difficult. So even if you find an antibody, how do you actually make sure it's going to work in real life? So the molecular dynamic field is an emerging one. It's highly complex. Thank God we have 13 physicists in the company at BioStrand that know this stuff inside out. So they built very rapidly a platform that that can emulate, different pH environment, different, energy force fields and so on. So that could affect the form of your antibody and could, by default, changes the efficacy of what you're trying to achieve. So they were quite impressed by that in the first place. I thought that's very interesting. So the patent just adds a layer of credibility and say, well, no, we know what we're doing. This is the technology. That's the basis. That's the core. This is what we use it for. And then suddenly it makes a whole lot of sense to them. Right? They're like, oh, okay, we see now. It's not as abstract. Yeah.
Originally, when you found BioStrand, their business plan was to go into major pharma and kind of run their data through their kind of AI type help and manage all their data, because the sequencing and the function, all that, it creates like huge amount of data, and a lot of them have historical amounts of data that they'd love to have at their fingertips, but they don't have it. So can you speak to the recently, obviously when we bought BioStrand, it was retooled to be a discovery engine, an AI discovery engine, but also they still have that ability to help major pharmas run and organize their data. Can you speak to the idea that we did a submitted request for proposal? We submitted an application, and I think didn't Jennifer say there was 30 some global companies that wanted to work with this one company? And
yeah, it's a private. Yep.
Go ahead,
Paul.
Well,
it's a private.
we were involved in that, and of course, if you're going against 30 some companies to manage a major pharma's sequencing and data and historical information, that's a big undertaking. So they created a platform to do just that, and they applied for this. And I think we're still in the running to get that business. So that would be another platform for revenue created for IPA as well.
That was actually the initial business model they had, which was data management. So you can imagine that all pharma companies, they sit on tons of data and they don't know what to do with it. More importantly, not only that they don't know what to do with it, the data are different types and they don't speak to each other. Like, you can't correlate genomics with proteomics that easily. It's just very complicated, and even less so to text and scientific publication. So we've been called on providing an RFP for a private, very large private pharma in Europe, where, from floppy disks to external hard drives of any kind to cloud-based, infrastructure, they wanted to unify all that data, that database, and these data lakes, as we call them. So indeed, there were 30 groups that showed up. We're in the remaining 3 that got selected out of the first presentation. We're going to present a demo to them mid-April, I think, or end of April, and then we'll know. What we have an advantage. So we don't have a fully built data management platform. We have one for our own needs, but to that scale, we don't. We'll need to work in building it. But from a budget standpoint, we decided not to allocate any resources at the time on this, but focus on drug discovery. That being said, the company is actually putting forward money that would enable us to externalize the cost of building the platform, which would then in turn be used to solicitate more pharma companies to use it. Where they got very intrigued and attracted our proposition is, yet again, the HIFs and those fingerprints are acting as a navigational layer on any type of data. So you would use that platform overlaying any other type of data lakes or types of databases, and you can actually cross-correlate in between all of them at light speed and extract information and correlate all that information, on one platform very efficiently without having to use like 1 gazillion CPUs and so on. So that obviously is highly attractive because the ultimate goal here in centralizing all that data is that trying to make sense of it and trying to find all these hidden knowledges laying across your databases that you have no idea, no way to go and source out.
So
whereas
what's really interesting
yes.
is that data recently became the #1 commodity in the world, right? I mean, it surpassed oil. Data is where it's at. So you're kind of in the mix of it all. I mean, you would think that maybe the stock presents at its current price levels presents an opportunity because, I mean, look, the overall market has been rough, right? Small cap biotech has been rough. And recently you broke an area of support, right? And Paul, you and I had a discussion earlier about that.
Yeah.
And where the stock is, it's having a nice little 2-day rally here. But the stock has been in a downtrend for
forever,
for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? That 2021, right? But maybe this is the capitulation moment, right? I mean,
I would think so. Yeah.
Is the company stronger today than it was six months ago, 12 months ago?
It's not even remotely comparable. I mean, the company has achieved so much.
And it has not been rewarded at all.
We're being barely 3 times revenue, so we're rewarded for nothing. Maybe a bit in the last 2 days, as you mentioned, for the patent, but I mean, there's just no love out there for sure. That being said, though, that's these divergent indicators are also what creates these opportunities, right? So you can't sit on value for too long without someone noticing it. And then someone will do its homework, will figure out the patent, will figure out the platform and where we're going with this. And then it says, that's ridiculous. Should be 10 times at least the value of what the market is offering at the moment, probably a lot more. So of course, company has to keep executing on deals and growing the business and so on. But I mean, the fundamental value of all these platform and technologies is just insanely absent from any conversation at this point.
The way I view it is this: unless this is the end of the world, and maybe it is, and then it doesn't really matter what any of this stuff means, right? Unless it's the end of the world, I mean, small cap stocks are at their lowest valuations in history. History is a long time, right? We needed a correction. We needed a cleansing. There are some companies out there that need to go away. They don't even deserve to exist. But then there's companies like this one that are executing, that have real products that could change the world in a dramatically positive way, right? These companies have been taken out to the woodshed and beaten, even though they're executing. And I believe that at some point, I think in the next 12 to 24 months, there's going to be an immense amount of wealth created for the people that can find companies that are executing, right? And I believe that IPA is one of those companies that's executing and hasn't been rewarded. And at some point, there's going to be a catch-up period, right? And I think it's going to be vicious and violent. I really do. I think there's going to be a lot of companies that have been stretched and beaten and have not been rewarded. And this fear and negativity and all the bullshit that's out there right now is going to go away. And those primal, those winning
animal spirits.
Yeah. Urges and spirit, the animal are going to take over. And that's why I think it's going to be violent. But can I tell you when exactly that's going to happen? I can't. All I can do is point you in the direction of really, really good, solid opportunities, right? And I don't tell people what to buy, what to sell. That's not what I do. What I do is I present the opportunity, tell you to do your own due diligence. And I'm sure, Paul, you'd be happy to take a call. Frederic, you'd be happy to take a call of anybody that wants to know more, right? I mean, this is our first interview. I typically, I'll be honest with you, one of the worst. I'm probably one of the only guys in the world that invested in a biotech company that got an approved drug, went through all of it, and then filed bankruptcy. So I'm probably the only guy that like had a winner, but it really wasn't a winner because they wound up filing bankruptcy. So I mean, it's a space that when I first started investing 38 years ago, I thought, holy shit, there's nothing to this, man. All you got to do is buy one of these biotech companies. They come out with some good news. Those things will rip. They'll triple and quadruple. I thought this is the easiest game on earth. Then you learn about CRLs and phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, all the stuff that you didn't know anything about. And biotech, even getting through phase 3 and getting an approved drug, and somehow still I find the one that goes bankrupt, right? So tough space, very tough space. But this is not a biotech company. This is not a binary event company. This is not the flip of a coin, right? This is a very, very, very different story. And one that I think at these levels, yeah, you took out support that you had for, and I'm just gonna point out the technicals here. I'm not a listen, I wasn't a technical guy, I was a fundamental guy. And then I went and took a technical course like 15 years ago. The first thing I look at is the chart because they are incredibly accurate. So what I'm looking at right now is you got 375, 380 right in that area was support for a while, right? And you recently cracked that. And as soon as you crack that, you look to the left. There's nothing for the technical guys to look at for potential support. That's why you're seeing this kind of waterfall effect. That's why I say it's also probably a capitulation moment, right? So I look at it, you're getting a pretty nice little bounce right now. You're in a downward trend, but when you take out that downward trend, that is a powerful break. When you take out a long-term downward trend, that is a very, very powerful break. And it means potentially you broke that trend that's been lasted a few years, and you're starting a new trend. And maybe that trend goes from the lower left to the upper right instead of the opposite, right? Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
That's the aim.
Yeah. We had a lot of, like I was talking to you, Tim, earlier when we were off camera, and we had a couple of things happen that were creating some pressure on the stock, and that is margin. We went through $4 at that point. Some of the brokerages withdrew half the amount of margin ability for the stock. So then we had, margin calls. We probably hit some stop losses when we gave up the 380, right? And then we fully deflated down to below the 3 level. We lost all margin. So when you get that happening, you got indiscriminate selling, the pressure on the selling side, and individual investors are looking to their left and looking to the right, and they're going, did I make a mistake in my assumptions with this company? You get into the fear position, right? And of course, I think that's what all happened. So we had that crescendo of selling, and I think we're through that now, and we're on the other side, and we're going to get some news flow, and the world isn't over, and the company's going to move forward. So, I think this is a fantastic for your viewers. It couldn't have been better timed. I mean, we spoke a month or two ago, and we took a while to get this discussion, but Tim, for your viewers, I think, if they want to stick their toe in the water, I mean, it's a very, in my opinion, and I've been in the business for, 30 to 40 years, this is a low a lower risk point in time to add a small position and then to start monitoring and doing due diligence. You never grab your full position right away, but to get a small position, you get interested, you get more motivated to follow the company, and then you move forward.
See, and that's a man after my own heart right there. You don't ever go all. I'm not telling anybody to go all in, right? But I'll tell you what, I think it's worth putting the company on your radar. And the only way for me to really pay attention to a company, because I talk to so many damn companies, is I've got to take a little position. I've got to take a little position. That way it's in my portfolio and I'm looking at it, right?
Right.
And that's what keeps me. I sign up for, it's not there now, but it'll be there by the time I actually do the video. Investor email alerts, which you guys have, right? Go there, sign up. Every time they come out with a press release, they'll get sent right to your email. I mean, how much easier back in the day when I first started investing, if I wanted information on a company, I had to have it mailed to me. I mean, mail, snail mail. That was a long time ago. Now it's right there. I mean, boom, it gets sent directly to your email. What more could you ask for, right? Start paying attention to the stock. If this thing takes out, and I'm going to call it $4, right around there, if it takes out 4 and then stays above 4, then I think you've done two things. You've taken out, which will be overhead resistance, because that acted as support for so long. When it comes back up, it's going to act as resistance, right? But then once you close above that, you've done two things. You've taken out that long-term trend, and you've taken out that resistance level. And that's when it gets, I think, probably pretty fun. And like I said, if this news flow, or if this isn't the end of the world, and I'm pretty sure it's not, then there's going to be a lot of good times ahead. And I think you guys are going to make a big difference in the world of drugs, in pharma, in disease, right? I think this is exciting stuff. I can tell, Frederic, I know you're a tech guy. I can tell you're excited about this stuff.
When you see this thing working, like when you see the models being projected and what you can do with them, like we've modeled how to humanize a rabbit antibody. That doesn't sound much, but it's an incredible accomplishment, because evidently you can't inject people with a rabbit antibody. It would trigger a massive side effect, and it would be very toxic. So you need to humanize it. That takes months, 9-10 months, and it's a very complicated process in the lab to do. So historically, what companies have been doing is there's this transgenic animal companies like Ligand we were referring to earlier in the call, where their specialty is to modify genetically these animals. So when you put an antigen in them, their immune response is human. It's not from their species. It's literally a modified animal that generates a human response, a human immune response. And these platforms have been very popular in the last decade and made a lot of money for Ligand at some point, because you can use the animals as a source of antibodies in the lab and then push them in the clinic. The trade-off is using these animals restricts quite considerably the diversity of the output of antibodies you're looking for. So if you want novel antibodies that perform, novel functions, it's very difficult with these animals, because the genetic modification kind of restricts them in their diversity of output. So if you keep a wild type, so an unmodified animal like we do, and you have all these crazy novel antibodies generated by nature to try to tackle, a cancer of some sort, it's what you're after, right? The problem is to humanize them. But if you can actually humanize them with the computer in silico in a matter of a couple of days or weeks, then you just circumvented the whole transgenic industry, which is worth tens of 15, 20s billions of dollars by doing a simple in silico process that would take 24, 48 hours and probably command a higher price tag. So you would literally, with that platform, be able to go and grab that market share as well. So you see how all these opportunities are developing in front of our eyes. We just have to, stay focused and build one after another. But our templates and the architecture we lay down is pretty compelling. So as we roll out these services, these technologies, it's just going to be extremely compelling and disrupting. So that's the other thing. Everything we're working on is disruptive in its own way. We're going to disrupt the transgenic market. We're going to disrupt in silico drug discovery. We're going to disrupt everything. And I think this is where real value is derived from. Disruption. Peter Thiel's, when he makes a huge investment, it's not about cash flow. It's about how disruptive this thing is. And same for Microsoft. When they saw OpenAI, what did they do? They didn't wait. They just cut a $10 billion check right away. And it said, no, that's not going elsewhere than in our, why? Because they saw that the investment is worth it because you take that technology away from your competitors. And in doing so, Dan, you just created yourself a huge edge. Not only are you disrupting the market, you're actually the sole owner and benefactor of this technology. So the same rationale goes here for the technologies we're building.
It's funny. The higher the risk, higher the reward, right? I mean, that's kind of the. I like to look for disruptors. Anybody that follows me knows I look for companies that are going to change status quo. They're going to challenge it. They're going to make you more efficient, safer, right? But there's more risk there by being early. I'm often early on a lot of things, but eventually I'm right. And they pay off in a big way. It's nice to be early on things. If you can have the vision of where they're going, where a company's going, where the industry's going, or how big of an impact is this? To me, there's two categories. There's wants and there's needs, right? And anytime saving lives or curing disease, or that's a need, right? That's not just a want. Like I need a car. I don't have to have a Lamborghini. I just need a car, right? I can have a Volkswagen Bug. It doesn't matter. I can have a moped. It doesn't matter. When you need something, you need it, right? And I think that this is a company that is solving a need, right? And maybe a lot of needs, a whole bunch of them. So that's what makes this exciting, and it is, or maybe it's early, but those are the things that pay off tenfold, hundredfold, thousandfold, right? I mean, it may sound like BS, but it's not. I mean, I can give you example after example, and this is management, leadership. You can have great product, great service. If you don't have the right leadership, you don't have the right team, I think odds are stacked against you, right? And I'm looking here at an investor that's been in since the beginning. And Frederic, you're pretty much the same thing, but you guys are full blown, but you're also head of corporate development. And then you've got a CEO that is, a brilliant scientific mind. These are the good components to have, right?
100%.
You've got people with capital market background. I would assume that neither one of you is going to do a stupid financing deal. Right? I would assume you would recognize what a stupid financing deal looks like, right?
Yeah, there's a ton of those out there. Oh my goodness.
So look, this is what I'm going to suggest to everybody. Put it on your radar. IPA. Sign up for their investor alerts. If you don't want to take a position, that's fine. if you want to take a starter position, probably not the worst thing in the world to take one in this area, right? Because you could have just had your capitulation moment. Because as sure as heck doesn't sound like the world's falling apart for you guys. It sounds like, the capital markets happen to hit you at a weak moment. And but this could be an unbelievable opportunity moving forward, right? All right, so check it out. Let's when do you think we should have an update?
You mean from the company itself?
Yeah, I mean, when give me a timeline of when you think maybe it might be a good time for us to touch base again and give everybody a follow-up.
Yeah, let's get through all that paperwork, the SEC filings, all that cleared out and behind us. So we're done there, and then we're going to start rolling out case studies and data and updates on our initial deals. So probably end of May would in a couple months would be
May, June.
We'll have a lot of
May, June, we'll come back. All right. Hey guys, I want to thank both of you for taking the time to come in and do this. And
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to our next chat.
All right. Thanks, Tim.
All right, guys, hold on
Likewise.
one
Thanks,
second.
Tim.
I'm going to stop recording on this. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. We had IPA ImmunoPrecise Antibodies. We had Frederic Chabot, Head of Corporate Development, and Paul Kozak, Individual Investor. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, why not give us a follow? Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.